North Carolina has over 80,000 miles of highway, more maintained road miles than almost any other state in America. That means a lot of driving, a lot of gas stops, a lot of small towns between the big cities where you pull off the interstate, fill up the tank, maybe grab a drink inside, and get back on the road. Most of the time, that stop is uneventful. But there are towns in North Carolina where locals will tell you to keep driving. And they really mean it. Do not stop, do not get gas, do not park your car. Just keep going until you hit the next exit. These are not rumors. These are places where the crime rates are so high relative to the population that stopping for 10 minutes puts you at a statistically higher risk than almost anywhere else in the state. Some of these towns sit directly on Interstate 95, the single most traveled highway on the entire East Coast. Every single day, millions of people driving from New York to Florida pass right through them without knowing what the data says. Today, we are counting down 10 North Carolina cities so violent that locals warn you not to stop for gas. Let's get into it. Number 10, Goldsboro. Most people driving through Goldsboro on US Highway 70 are heading to the beach. Goldsboro sits in the middle of the state in Wayne County, about an hour southeast of Raleigh. It is the kind of town you pass through on the way to somewhere better, like Atlantic Beach, Emerald Isle, or the Outer Banks. You see the exit, your tank is low, and you think, small town, quiet, I will just stop here real quick. That is exactly the kind of thinking that gets travelers into trouble. Goldsboro has a total crime rate of 66 per 1,000 residents, more than double the North Carolina state average. The violent crime rate is 783 per 100,000 people. And property crime is the bigger concern for anyone stopping at a gas station, 58 property crimes per 1,000 residents per year. Your chance of becoming a property crime victim here is 1 in 17. The poverty rate in Goldsboro is 24%. Median household income is $36,437, well below both the state and national average. Wayne County as a whole has dealt with economic decline for decades as manufacturing jobs disappeared and never came back. When you combine that with a small police force stretched across a mid-sized city, you get exactly the conditions that breed opportunistic crime. Travelers are targets because they are obvious. You pull in with out-of-state plates, leave your bags visible in the back seat, and walk inside for 5 minutes. That is all the time it takes. Goldsboro is not a place locals avoid entirely, but they know which gas stations have problems and they know not to stop after dark. If you are heading to the coast on US Highway 70, fill up in Smithfield or Wilson instead. You will get there with your windows intact. Number 9, Kinston. Kinston doesn't get talked about much. That's partly the problem. It sits on US Highway 70 and US Highway 258 in Lenoir County, roughly halfway between Goldsboro and the Crystal Coast. It's another one of those towns that travelers hit when they are running low and do not want to wait, a convenient stop on the way to somewhere more scenic. But Kinston consistently shows up on every most dangerous cities list in North Carolina. The violent crime rate is significantly above the state average. Property crime is pervasive. Vehicle break-ins at gas stations along the US Highway 70 corridor are a documented recurring issue. What makes Kinston interesting and concerning is how it looks from the road. There has been real downtown revitalization here. There are restaurants, a brewery scene, an arts community. People have worked hard to rebuild it. But the crime data in the surrounding residential areas tells a very different story than the curated downtown experience. Kinston's poverty rate hovers around 30%. The city has lost more than a third of its population since 1980. Shrinking cities with aging infrastructure and limited tax revenue have fewer resources for everything: schools, roads, and law enforcement. That math plays out in the crime numbers every single year. For a traveler stopping at a gas station on the outskirts, the revitalized downtown is irrelevant. What matters is that your car is parked in a lot where break-ins happen regularly, in a city where the police are understaffed relative to the size of the problem. Keep driving to New Bern. It's only 35 more minutes, and the stats are dramatically different. Number 8. Rocky Mount. Rocky Mount sits at the intersection of U.S. Highway 64 and Interstate 95. That is one of the most important details in this entire video. Interstate 95 is the spine of the East Coast. Everyone driving from New England to Florida passes through it. Rocky Mount is one of the first major exits you hit after crossing from Virginia into North Carolina heading south, or one of the last before you leave the state heading north. After a long stretch of highway with not much in between, Rocky Mount looks like relief. Gas, food, a place to stretch your legs. But Rocky Mount has a violent crime rate of 9.3 per 1,000 residents. Your chance of being a crime victim here is 1 in 107 for violent crime and 1 in 25 for property crime. The city has appeared on National Dangerous Cities lists for years. Part of Rocky Mount's problem is structural. The city straddles 2 counties, Nash and Edgecombe, and the jurisdiction split creates real coordination headaches for law enforcement. Resources are divided, response coverage gets complicated, and Edgecombe County, which covers the eastern half of Rocky Mount, has some of the highest poverty rates in the entire state. The city has been shrinking for years. Population has dropped from a peak of around 60,000 down to the mid-40s. Vacant properties, abandoned storefronts, and economic stagnation create exactly the environment where crime concentrates. The gas stations right off the Interstate 95 exits serve a constant stream of travelers, and that steady flow of people with out-of-state plates has not gone unnoticed. Rocky Mount locals know which exits to use and which to avoid. You do not have that map. Keep that in mind before you pull off here. Number 7. Whiteville. Here is a name most people outside of North Carolina have never heard. Population around 5,600 people in Columbus County. It does not sound like a place that should be on this list. But Whiteville has a property crime rate of 95 per 1,000 residents, one of the highest in the entire state. The violent crime rate is 14.6 per 1,000. The combined crime rate of nearly 110 per 1,000 residents makes it one of the most statistically dangerous stops you can make in North Carolina. Here's the geography that makes it relevant to travelers. Whiteville sits on US 74 and US 76, 2 highways that connect Charlotte to Wilmington. Anyone driving from the Charlotte metro area to the beach, and a lot of people do that, especially in summer, passes directly through Whiteville. It is almost exactly the halfway point between those 2 cities. Tired, needing gas, it can feel like the perfect time to stop. The economic situation in Columbus County is severe. Whiteville experiences about 3.2 violent crimes per day on average, despite having fewer than 6,000 residents. Drug-related crime, primarily tied to opioid trafficking, drives a significant portion of the property crime, including theft, burglaries, and vehicle break-ins. The proximity to major transit routes makes getaways easy. It is, in the language of law enforcement, a corridor town. One local security firm described Whiteville as experiencing levels of theft, burglary, and vandalism rarely seen anywhere else in the country for a town its size. That is not a small claim, and it is backed by the numbers. If you are driving from Charlotte to Wilmington on US 74, gas up before you leave, or wait until you are past Whiteville. Trust the data on this one. Wadesboro is the seat of Anson County, sitting on US 74 between Charlotte and Rockingham. Population around 5,200 people. It is a small, quiet-looking town that gives almost no visual warning of what the crime data actually shows. Wadesboro has a violent crime rate of 18.94 per 1,000 residents, making it one of the most violent towns per capita in all of North Carolina. That number puts it in the company of cities 10 times its size. The property crime rate adds another 64 per 1,000 residents on top of that. Anson County is one of the poorest counties in North Carolina. The median household income is well below the state average, and unemployment runs persistently high. The economic base that once supported the county, textiles, and manufacturing has largely disappeared. What is left is a community where a significant portion of residents are living in poverty, and where the local police force has to cover a large geographic area with limited resources. For travelers on US 74 between Charlotte and the South Carolina border, Whitesboro is a natural stop. It is about 50 miles from Charlotte, far enough that you might need gas, and close enough that it does not seem like it should be a problem. But the data disagrees. The violent crime rate here is not a blip. It has been consistently elevated for years. This is not a town having a bad statistical year. This is a structural problem rooted in deep economic hardship, and it shows up in the numbers every single year. Small town, big risk. Keep it moving. Salisbury is different from most of the cities on this list because it does not look like a dangerous place. It really does not. It has a historic downtown, beautiful old architecture, craft breweries, a nationally recognized Civil War cemetery. It sits on Interstate 85 between Charlotte and Greensboro, which means it is one of the most accessible exits in the entire state. Millions of people drive past it every year. That accessibility is exactly why it makes this list. Salisbury's crime rate is well above both state and national averages. The city has a documented gang and drug trafficking problem that has been reported on by local law enforcement for years. Rowan County sees persistent issues with methamphetamine and heroin distribution and the crime that follows those supply chains. Vehicle break-ins and property theft in gas station parking lots along the Interstate 85 corridor are a known and recurring issue. What makes Salisbury particularly dangerous for travelers is the gap between perception and reality. You pull off Interstate 85, you see the signs for the historic downtown, you think this seems fine. But the gas stations and fast food strips right off the interstate are not the historic downtown. They are commercial corridors where crime concentrates, with lots of through traffic, limited visibility, and people who are clearly from out of town. The charm of Salisbury is real. The danger is also real. For a gas stop on Interstate 85, there are safer exits on either side. Use them. Fayetteville is the largest city on this list, and it earns its spot. It sits at the intersection of Interstate 95 and US Highway 301, right in the middle of the most traveled highway corridor on the East Coast. Anyone driving from the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic to Florida, including New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Virginia, passes through Fayetteville. It is a major stopping point. Hotels, restaurants, and gas stations everywhere. It looks like a full-service highway city. But Fayetteville's crime rate is 14% above the North Carolina average and rising. The city saw a 14% overall increase in crime in recent reporting periods. Raleigh's crime is going down. Charlotte's crime is going down. Fayetteville is moving in the other direction. The city has long struggled with challenges tied to its proximity to Fort Liberty, the massive military installation formerly known as Fort Bragg. The transient nature of a military town with tens of thousands of people rotating in and out every few years creates an unstable community structure. Soldiers cycling through, contractors coming and going, and the informal economy around the base. It is a complex environment that is difficult to address with conventional policing. For travelers, Fayetteville's size actually makes it more dangerous in practical terms, not less. More locations means more foot traffic, means more opportunity for the kind of opportunistic crime that targets people passing through. Car break-ins, gas station robberies, and theft from parking lots are all documented issues here. You almost certainly have to stop somewhere near Fayetteville if you are driving Interstate 95. If you do, stay alert, keep your stop short, do not leave anything visible in your car, and lock your doors the second you step out. This is not a city where you leave your car running while you go inside. Number 3, Rockingham. Most people who have driven through Rockingham on US 74 do not even remember it. That is both the appeal and the danger. Rockingham is the seat of Richmond County, a small city of about 9,000 people sitting on a major highway corridor between Charlotte and the South Carolina coast. It has a Walmart, a handful of gas stations, fast food, all the infrastructure that makes it look like a perfectly routine highway stop. But Rockingham's crime rate is 54.34 per 1,000 residents. That is more than double the North Carolina statewide average, more than double. For a town of 9,000 people, that is an extraordinary number. It puts Rockingham among the most dangerous small cities in the entire state year after year. Richmond County as a whole faces severe economic hardship. The poverty rate is high, unemployment is persistently elevated, and the local economy has never recovered from the collapse of the textile and manufacturing sectors that once defined the region. What that looks like on the ground is a small city with a serious crime problem, a police department with limited resources, and a highway running right through it that delivers a fresh supply of travelers every single day. US 74 is one of the primary routes for people driving between Charlotte and Myrtle Beach, one of the most popular summer vacation destinations on the East Coast. Every summer, hundreds of thousands of people drive that road. Rockingham is a natural stop. Most of them have no idea what the crime statistics say about this town. Now you do. Fill up in Albemarle before you get here, or push through to Laurinburg on the other side. Either way, do not let Rockingham be your stop. Henderson sits on Interstate 85 in Vance County, right on the North Carolina and Virginia border, and that location is everything. If you are driving from the mid-Atlantic states, Virginia, Maryland, DC, or Pennsylvania, down into North Carolina, Henderson is one of the very first North Carolina cities you hit. Or if you are heading north, it is one of the last North Carolina stops before you cross into Virginia. Either way, it is exactly the kind of city where you say, I will just stop here and get gas before I cross the state line. That logic makes sense on paper. In practice, it puts you in one of the most statistically dangerous cities in North Carolina. Henderson's violent crime rate is 1,791 per 100,000 residents, 399% higher than the national average. Your chance of being a violent crime victim here is 1 in 55. Property crime adds another layer. You have a 1 in 17 chance of being a property crime victim in any given year. The citywide crime index is 3.1 times higher than the US average and higher than 99% of all US cities. That last stat deserves a moment. Higher than 99% of cities in the entire United States. This is not a city that is slightly above average. This is a city in the top 1% of dangerous places in America, sitting right on Interstate 85 waiting for you to pull off and get gas. Henderson has just 41 full-time law enforcement employees for a city of nearly 15,000 people. That is a razor-thin ratio. Response times in a city that understaffed are not what you want to be relying on if something happens while you are parked at a gas station. Cross the state line, get gas in South Hill or Emporia in Virginia, or wait until you are well south of Henderson. Do not make Henderson your first stop in North Carolina heading south or your last stop heading north. The number one city on this list is worse, but Henderson is close enough. Number 1, Lumberton. Everything on this list has been building to Lumberton, and nothing else comes close. Lumberton sits at the intersection of Interstate 95 and Interstate 74 in Robeson County in the southeastern corner of North Carolina. Interstate 95 is the single most traveled highway in the United States. It is the road that connects every major East Coast city from Miami to Boston. It is the road that every family from New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts drives when they head to Florida for vacation. It is the road that an estimated 60 to 70 million vehicles travel every single year. And right in the middle of it, there is Lumberton. The crime numbers here are not just bad for North Carolina. They are extraordinary by any measure, anywhere in the United States. Total crime rate is 117 per 1,000 residents. According to FBI data, Lumberton has one of the highest crime rates in America compared to all communities of all sizes, from the smallest towns to the very largest cities. Your chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime here is 1 in 9. Read that again. 1. Violent crime is 448% higher than the national average. Property crime is 465% higher than the national average. Your chance of being a property crime victim specifically, a break-in, a theft, or a vehicle stolen is 1 in 10. Lumberton has one of the highest motor vehicle theft rates in the entire nation. If you leave your car parked at a gas station and walk inside, you are doing so in a place where car theft is not an occasional event. It is a pattern, a documented, persistent, statistically measurable pattern. The poverty rate in Lumberton is 35%. Median household income is around $32,000 a year. Robeson County is one of the poorest counties in North Carolina. The local police department is working under severe resource constraints in a city where a crime occurs on average every 3 hours and 49 minutes. The cruelest part of this is the location. Interstate 95 is not a road people choose to drive through Lumberton. It is the road. If you are driving between the Northeast and Florida, you are going through Lumberton, whether you want to or not. You will see the exits. You will see the gas stations and the fast food signs. You will be tired from driving, your tank will be getting low, and it will look like every other highway stop you have ever made. It is not. Locals in the surrounding area do not stop in Lumberton unless they have to. Truck drivers who run Interstate 95 regularly know the reputation. But the millions of vacation travelers, the families with kids in the back seat, and the people who have never driven this stretch before do not have that knowledge. Now you do. If your tank is dropping on Interstate 95 in this part of North Carolina, plan ahead. Stop in Fayetteville before you get here. Yes, Fayetteville is number 4 on this list, but it is still dramatically safer than Lumberton. Or push through to Dillon or Florence in South Carolina, just a few miles past the state line. Either way, do not make Lumberton your gas stop. Those are 10 North Carolina cities where locals warn you not to stop for gas. From small forgotten towns on US 74 to mid-sized cities on Interstate 85 to the most dangerous highway stop on the entire East Coast, North Carolina has over 80,000 miles of road. Most of them are perfectly fine. But these 10 are where the data says to keep your guard up, keep your doors locked, and keep your stop as short as possible. If you are planning a road trip through the Tar Heel State, now you know where to be careful. If you want more content like this, subscribe. Drop a comment below telling me if you have ever stopped in any of these cities. I read every single one. We will see you in the next one.